Hi everyone, it's Farisha, and welcome back to Casual Fridays with Exec Ed. Now today is our second episode of our very special series on water and sustainability in collaboration with our research center, the Institute of Water Policy. And here with us today is Olivia Jensen, a senior research fellow at the Institute. Hi Olivia, thank you for joining us today.
Hi Farisha, thank you for inviting me.
So let's start off with a topic that you are very familiar with, water and public-private partnerships, otherwise known as PPPs. So we know that the financing, delivery, and management of public goods and infrastructure, such as electricity, roads, and education, are usually undertaken by the government. Specifically, when we look at the water sector, we observe a growing trend towards PPPs where water is supplied and treated by the private sector. So why do you think governments are turning to the private sector? And can PPPs really be a viable option for countries to reform their water sector?
So governments turn to the private sector through PPPs for management expertise, for technological innovation, as well as for financing to a certain extent. But it's not a blank check, of course. Ultimately, the cost of the infrastructure are either paid for by consumers or by taxpayers. One of the particular problems that governments have is that public procurement processes are often aligned more with building new infrastructure than rehabilitating or maintaining existing infrastructure. You could say that there's a cycle of build, neglect, rebuild. But what PPPs do is they bundle together the development of the infrastructure with its maintenance over these long contract periods of 20 to 30 years. That means that governments can get value for money, but it also means that citizens can be assured of good quality service over these longer time frames.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for explaining that. And we know that there are various types of PPP contracts, ranging from O&M to BOT, and the more comprehensive DBFO. So where do you think most water contracts lie within this spectrum? And what are some of the risks associated with water contracts?
You're right, there are a lot of acronyms when it comes to PPPs.
Yeah.
So when we try to understand how to classify these different types of contracts, there are two axes that we can think about. One is the private party in the contract involved in providing the service direct to consumers? So that in a utility service contract or in a concession they are. And that contrasts with projects where what the private sector is doing is basically building and operating a treatment plant, for example. The second axis we can think of is what's the role of the private sector in providing their financing? Now in a contract like a service contract, the private sector isn't involved on the financing side, and that contrasts with BOTs or concessions where the main financing for the capital expenditure is coming from the private party.
Okay.
So when it comes to the water sector, I don't think we're really moving towards an optimal model of some kind for PPPs. Rather, I think what's happening is that we're seeing a differentiation of contract types which are best suited to the particular policy objectives of a city or of a country.